Thank you for joining me in the MPP Power Hour. I am your host, Massimo Palermo. Today I have with me as my guest, AK Cooper-Elliot. AK was born in Germany and raised in Yorkshire. After graduating from university, AK perused a high-flying career in accountancy and procurement. Retiring early from her executive role, she now creates exciting romantic and crime fiction in her novels. She has 5 books published now and only has been writing around 3 years or so. And now, without further ado, I would like to welcome to my show AK Cooper-Elliot. Hello, AK. Welcome to the MPP Power Hour.
Hiya, Massimo. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm fine. I'm fine. Yeah.
Great. I'm
Yeah.
really excited to have you here today. And so with that being said, let's have the audience get to know AK Cooper-Elliot a little better.
Yeah, sure. As you said, I was born in Germany. My dad was in the forces. So I grew up with a lot of Australian children and a lot of American children. Um, and then I started school in Hong Kong, and then I came to England and grew up in Yorkshire, as you can tell with my accent. Um, and
Yes.
I just grew within the community. I did well at school, went to university, and then I got an high-powered role in procurement and accountancy. Crazy time, very, very hectic. And then, I'd used to do sports, skiing, ride motorbikes. I were just like a power girl. I wanted to do it all. And
Mm-hmm.
I did do it all. And then at the age of 48, I got diagnosed with MS, and it just stopped my life completely. But because over the years I've written stories, I just, filed them away. And because obviously I had to retire early, it gave me an opportunity to open those boxes again. And I started releasing the stories,
Mm-hmm.
which I've so far I've got 5 published and
Mm-hmm.
3 on the way.
Oh,
So yeah,
yeah.
I'm writing my 9th one at the minute.
Wow.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
MS is not slowing you down as far as your writing skills and
Mm, no,
imagination,
the
I
only
guess.
problem, yeah, the only problem I have is I sometimes I struggle with my fingers, so I cannot use a laptop. I have to use an ergonomic keyboard wireless to my laptop. I also struggle as well when I'm fatigued because I tend to write backwards. So if you get a mirror, you'll be able to read my novels fantastic. So that's the time I have to stop. So it's
Yeah,
it's a mess.
yeah.
So I do have a team of people who work with me, consultants, and they help me a
Hmm.
great deal. And I've got one who does fantastic blurbs for me.
So
So yeah.
one of the tools that I used while I was writing, when I got
Mm,
tired of typing on the keyboard, as you mentioned,
yeah.
because it can get very tiring, is I was using the 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 oral where you could just speak into the word function and it just types up
Yeah,
for you. So that might be
yeah.
a nice little tool you might use down the road. I mean, it's not perfect, but
It's not, and unfortunately,
yeah,
I've tried it and it doesn't understand Yorkshire.
we
So
need to.
everything is backwards.
Okay, well, we need to get that language your dialect picked up or your language picked up a little better by word there, so that way we can get
Yeah,
you writing there. So
yeah.
okay,
We
I'm
need a
sorry.
Yorkshire dictionary. A Yorkshire dictionary.
There,
Yeah,
yeah, there you go. We need
yeah,
that
yeah.
adaption there. I'm sorry, go on. You were saying.
No, no, no. I was just going to say, if somebody could create this
Uh,
dialect, in Yorkshire, oh, I would like, oh, I worship them because if having something like that is fantastic.
well, some things, great minds think alike, and you never know. Maybe that invention will come along, and someone will sit there with someone with your language and your background, and create this word so that way people can understand it better when they're trying to
Oh,
dictate.
yeah.
So,
That
oh,
would be
interesting.
great.
Yeah. Yeah, and you know what? To be honest, I mean, like I said, even when I use the dictation part,
Yeah.
I mean, with my accent, I mean, it's not that, you know, that it's horrible accent. It's just sometimes the way I enunciate things, word is just like, that's not the word I said. Even with text
Yeah.
messages, you know, you do yeah, it's just like, that's not what I said. But yeah, I
No,
get it. There's a challenge. It's not perfect, like I
it's a
said.
challenge.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
a challenge.
And I think in a few years somebody will adapt to it where they will do you know, a language barrier
Hmm.
where these computers will understand us at some point,
Hmm.
which would be fantastic.
Right.
But I've got to admit, Marcia, I love your accent. It's
Thank you.
fantastic. And I mean, my books are based in London and New York, and it, I just love the Bronx accent, particularly. That is one of my favorite accents.
Well,
Yeah.
that's interesting you say that because I'm not from the Bronx or New
No,
York.
you're
I'm
not
in
from the
Chicago.
Bronx. But I do love your accent
Yeah.
as you speak.
Hmm.
And but you know, when I watch movies and I
Hmm.
watch them with the Bronx accent, I love
Yep.
that as well.
Yeah.
And at the back of my mind, when I've written Stellar Nebula,
Yeah.
um, I always think of that Bronx accent, the
Hmm.
New York accent. Fantastic. Love
Yeah.
it. Love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You maybe you watched the series or the movies, probably. You've seen the Godfather movies,
Oh,
probably, and The Sopranos, the TV
oh
series, The
yeah.
Sopranos. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, it's just those guys and those accents. I mean, a lot of people would say, "Hey, you would fit right in." They're like, "Yeah, I guess I could if I wanted to." But anyway, so
My favorites. Yeah.
yeah, I
Yeah.
love that show. Yeah, it was the Sopranos was a great show. But
Oh, it
um
is.
yeah. So anyway, so yeah, so you wrote your books, you got down to your latest novel, right?
Mhm.
That you want
Yeah.
to talk about today.
Yeah.
Go
Yeah.
ahead.
Well, obviously, I released the Stellar Nebula,
Hmm.
which is from my first book, Eternum, and basically, it's about the showbiz world, and you have Theo-James Miller, who's a billionaire, and he runs his own company in the film world, and he marries a viscountess daughter in London, and brings her across to America, and basically, because she has the pure English accent, she's perfect for radio. So when World War II breaks out, she actually, you know, reads the news on the radio, and she eventually becomes a worldwide phenomenon in the movie world. And she has a family of two boys and two girls, and the last girl is what we call a stellar nebula, a creation of a star, because she becomes a billionaire singer songwriter, and she has to fight her demons. And one of the demons she has to fight is her manager, who's corrupt and is taking millions from her. And Theo-James Miller, her father, is not only a film director and who owns a film company, he's also the head, like the godfather of the society.
Hmm.
And it is a very powerful um, group of men, and basically they'll get rid of the problem tomorrow. And
Uh-oh.
that's what, yeah, that's what the book is about. And then the second book follows on matrimonium, where we get into Allison's uh, middle age, where she gets married and has children, and more develops with the society, more murders, you know, more, you know,
Hmm.
conspiracies.
Hmm.
Oh, and then you get to the third one, which is, I call it in my Yorkshire accent, decusis, but it is pronounced dechasis, which is the proper Latin word. And that is the end of the star, which is a supernova. And basically, everything from the first two books is finalized in the conclusion, but the society still continues. And I can't give you any more who
Sure.
runs it because that will spoil the plot.
Right. Well, we don't want to ruin it for folks that want to read this. I mean, we just want to
Yes.
get people interested. So, and speaking of, let me share the movie trailer or book trailer, I
Yeah.
guess, for the
Yeah.
for your book. And I'll pop it up in a moment. You gotta love
Fantastic.
that name, Romano Mancini.
Brilliant name. Brilliant name. Yes.
I love
You
it. I
see,
can tell you that much.
well, I used to have a private ski instructor called Romano, and he was Italian because that's where I used to ski in Italy. And, writing that book, I just thought of my ski instructor, Romano, and I just thought, what a fantastic name. Let's go for it.
Romano, romantic, romance, it kind of makes sense, right? Yeah.
Yeah. It's a very glamorous world,
Hmm.
and everybody is like designer and chic, but they've all got that dark inner soul, which
Hmm.
is fantastic.
Yeah.
Mm.
And this takes place in what era? You said after the war?
Right. The
Yeah.
Eternum, which is the first book, starts in 1938 and it actually finishes in the year 2000.
Okay.
Okay. But the Stellar Nebula starts in 1956 when Allison is born.
Okay.
And it runs through to the third book where she dies in 2019.
Oh, okay.
So there's a lot of coverage
Mhm.
through history.
Sure, sure.
Yeah.
And so let me ask this question. As a writer, does Allison have any does your personality have a little bit of in your feature person, Allison there?
Yeah. Yes, yes. Drinking Earl Grey tea. I love Earl Grey tea. She's always got a cup of Earl Grey tea. And also, some of the words she says is very similar to what I would use. So yeah, there is a little bit of Alison there, what is obviously from the author. Some of my friends who's read the book laugh because she drinks red Merlot wine.
Hmm.
That was one of my favorites.
Reminiscent of
So
you.
yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, and walking around in big fluffy slippers and robes and things is
Hmm.
that's just me. Yeah.
Yeah. So the story itself is a very interesting story. The plot, right? And the
Yeah.
background. Did you just imagine it, just something that inspired you? Because a lot of times we as authors like see something and we get
Mm,
inspired by something. Can you
yeah.
dive into that a little bit?
Yeah. Right. Well, when I was at university, I had a friend who's obviously homosexual. But he was fighting to become a woman, a female. And I felt so sorry for him because he couldn't get out, basically. And I based one of my characters on him. And I could feel from that character um, all his frustrations because I used to help him and he was very close to me. So I could write that into the plot. And then obviously being in an executive world, you come across different characters.
Mm-hmm.
And so every now and again when I was writing, I always saw one of these characters, popping up.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, ah, I'm going to use that. And that's what I did. So it's a mixture through all my life coming across different people, different, characters, different classes,
Mm-hmm.
So obviously I just mingled them all together.
There you go.
And I've got to admit, I've fallen in love with my characters in these books. They are fantastic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's great.
Yeah.
I mean, I can see the enthusiasm in you. Um, so over the years, so you're telling me is you used to jot them down, did you filed them away, so to speak, right? You're like, I
Yeah.
gotta write about this at some point, right? So you just had that in
Yeah.
mind, like, okay, this is character B or whatever for whatever point, and somehow you meshed them together, you got yourself a series.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I've just put them all into a bag,
yeah.
and I produced this fantastic series called the Templeton Miller Dynasty,
Hmm.
and it's absolutely fantastic. And you could actually watch these on TV.
Hmm.
And sometimes I sit and watch, these programs, and I just think the story's flatline.
Hmm.
It's there's nothing there. And
Yeah.
I'm thinking, you should be putting that into this and or taking that out and, adding this into it. And it's like I sit there now watching these shows and I'm like a director. And I'm
Yeah.
like thinking, no, you're doing that wrong. As a writer, I would not do that,
Right. Right.
and that's how I've become now. Yes.
Yeah. So I've had these discussions with other folks as well, other writers, about
Mm.
there's just nothing out there, nothing original. I mean, Hollywood keeps repeating the same stories. They rewrite, like Indiana Jones just came out, the fifth one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Marvel keeps rerunning the same
Oh,
plots and
yeah.
everything. It's just
Yeah.
like, hey, the first couple of times, okay, cool, but they
Yeah.
come up with an original idea, but they're not. They're just recycling. It's unfortunate. And we as writers see that it's just like, oh, there's just nothing to watch because it's the same old, same old, same old. And I find myself going back to watching the black and whites.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
Black and whites.
yeah,
Yeah.
the Humphrey Bogart movies or the Jimmy
Oh,
Stewart
yeah.
movies and Marilyn Monroe and all those, because
Yeah.
at least they were original.
The original, yeah. And also, as well, I don't like the fact that when they do rewrite them, they're changing the story. The
Hmm.
story should be the flat line, it should be the baseline, and
Hmm.
then you create on top of it. It doesn't happen. It's not happening.
Right.
And there's lots of shows I've started watching, I turn off because
Hmm.
it doesn't grip me. It's boring,
Right.
you know. And
Yeah.
it's like you said, five Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
I went to see the original
Yeah.
when it came out in the 80s,
Yeah.
and you can't beat that one.
Well, those first couple were great. I mean, you can't beat those.
You can't beat him, no.
Right.
So,
And Harrison
you know,
Ford at his age trying to repeat his role is just kind of silly at this point.
it is, and he filmed it in London and Scotland and
Uh,
everything. So I don't know how you get it, Indiana Jones in my country. I doesn't seem to gel together. It's a little bit like that.
yeah.
So,
Well, I mean, it's just, I mean, let's just face it, people are going to be like, that's just not realistic. A guy that
yeah,
age should, yeah. It's just, no one's buying it.
yeah, exactly. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, I totally agree with you. It's all Marvel. It's all sci-fi.
Yeah.
But I've noticed that the romance side and like the gangster side is not there.
Hmm.
It's not there at the minute. And I'm
Right.
thinking, come on, bring him out. Like you said, Godfather. Nobody can beat the Godfather.
Right.
Nobody.
Right.
And the Goodfellas.
Right.
Nobody can do that. And to me, it needs a shake up. And I would say the Templeton Miller dynasty could be that shake up one day. Who knows?
Yeah, well, someone over there in Hollywood is watching this. You might want to look into this and pay visit to AK over here and say, hey, let's talk about your book here. Maybe we can do something with it. You never know. But yeah,
You never know.
yeah,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
never know.
absolutely.
Yeah, you just never know, and that's the reason I created this platform. So
Yeah,
that way there is opportunity for others to, maybe they're not aware of your book and your story, and hey, let's look into this. And maybe there's something more to it than we would have known. And we are independent, indie writers, as we're
yes,
known as. So we're not going to get the glorification like the big three or big four
yeah,
publishers,
yeah,
because they're only interested in the big shots anyway, right?
yeah, they are.
People, yeah. So folks like us probably have great stories, and we just need people to kind of like look into it, because once people start saying, oh, hey, this is actually really good, really interesting. So yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's just having that break.
Hmm.
And if you get that break, and I've got to admit, if it does happen, I will be one to watch it because I'm in it, if you
Yeah.
understand what I mean. It's there.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like I see it all the time when I'm writing.
Yeah.
I mean, the ninth novel I'm writing at the moment is about the Templeton Miller's niece,
Uh-oh.
Emile. And I'm enjoying doing this at the minute.
Yeah.
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 That's interesting to say that, because when I did write, I was enjoying writing it because I did put myself in the character, the main character. I did do that, so I kind of like was trying to relate as I was writing. So even in my other non main characters my first two books that I published, even though they may be different characters, I still see something in me and a little bit behind the scenes, so to speak.
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
right? Like, even if I'm writing the female as the main character, I still see maybe a little bit of, my own character behind the scenes deeper in there.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's very
Yeah.
interesting to write that way.
I understand what you've just said then,
Yeah.
because there's a lot of male point of view in my books, and I've got it to a T. And it's kind of like men are from Mars and women's from Venus. And it's like, how on earth? One of my friends said to me, how on earth do you think like a man? And I said, it's probably because I've been married for so long.
So you've got an idea of what
I just watch my husband.
Just look at your husband. There you go. Get some pointers from him. So you have the crime, you have the romance. They get a little steamy in there. The romance part.
Yeah, it does get steamy. Yeah. There's a little bit of adult themes in it.
Just enough to pique people's
interest.
Enough.
Yeah. I think you've got to have a little bit of that.
Yeah,
definitely.
I do.
I mean, you won't be in an elite world if you didn't.
Yeah. So, and it makes it realistic too, right? Because yeah. Exactly. Okay. Yeah. So, wow. All right. So you've got 5. You've got 4 more literally in the works. 3 more that are coming out like this year, you said, right?
That's right. I've got I write children's books as well, and they're detective books. And I've got Lily and the Haunted Rectory. That is waiting to go into the publisher. It's being edited. The Christmas book has just been edited, which is the Lily and the Nutcracker Soldiers. And then I've got the Templeton Miller one, which is called Victorian, which is the Sebastian Dupont story. And that starts from 1941 and runs up to 1975.
Oh, interesting eras.
Yeah. And that is gangster based, that book. Definitely. Yeah, very good. Yeah.
A little shoot 'em up a little bit, huh?
Oh, yes.
Those are very interesting novels. I mean, it's kind of funny you say that, because when I first started telling my friends that I wrote a book, my friends were like, "Oh yeah, what'd you write? Did you write a gangster movie, like a mafia movie?" No. What? Like, it's romantic comedy. Really? Where did that come from? Like, they would have never guessed it. Like, it's just hysterical.
Correct. I mean, I look at you and I would say, like you said, The Sopranos, but romantic comedy, I want to put you into that category.
Right.
But I suppose it's like me, really. A lot of my friends thought, oh, gangsters. And I'm going, yeah, I love gangsters. You know what I mean? And I've always loved the story behind them. So, like you, my friends see me just writing beautiful, romantic novels, and it ends happily ever after. I like to write with twists.
Yes, you did, with a little bit of the gangster crime mafia theme there. I mean, that's, like I said, this book has all kinds of twists in it. It's not just romantic. It's, like you said, it's got the conspiracy, it's got the backstabbing, stealing. It's got all kinds of themes in it. And if not for a what is that called, Lifetime type of movie, it's definitely I think has that kind of script where it definitely someone should want to do a movie about that. Definitely has all the elements to make a very interesting. It's not just one element, it's got a bunch of elements, so you can have all kinds of things going on. So definitely.
It has. It's like a page turner. You need to turn the next page to see what happens, and then it goes on to something else. So you need to keep reading because you need to find out what's happening there.
Yeah.
And every time I'm writing, I've got about 3 scenarios going off at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's great because it's keeping you on your toes. It
Yeah.
kept me on my toes writing it. So
Yeah,
as a
sure.
reader,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, you got to put it in a way where you got to keep people interested and not lose them, right? Because yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Somebody said to me, in an interview, what books do you, read? So everybody's, thinking I'm reading, gangster books and romance books. I read vampire books and I read like witches books. Not, I mean, I've read Harry Potter, but I'm talking like Twilight,
Mm-hmm.
things like that. That's the that's what I'm comfortable with reading. So my writing is completely off the map
Mm-hmm.
to what I read.
Right.
And my favorite author is Bram Stoker because I love Dracula. And also, I love J.R. Ward, the Black Dagger Brotherhood, all the vampires based in New York again.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's kind of like my reading is completely different to my writing,
Mm-hmm.
but love it. I just love the intensity
Yeah.
of that type of story. Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting you say that because as a reader, I couldn't I couldn't find anything interesting to read in my, up my alley. I loved reading
Mm,
about sports,
mm.
sports autobiographies about sports stars, and I like to read historical stuff, you know,
Yeah.
right? Nothing close to what I wrote about. So yeah,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
maybe one day I will write something historical or something based off of that, but you never know.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's
You
interesting
could.
you say that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is because as writers, we write what comes from his heart and what comes from his
Mm-hmm.
head,
Yep.
but we read completely different.
Mm-hmm.
So, Massimo, to me, you're very on the same road as I am
Mm-hmm.
because you read the opposite to what we write.
Right.
And I always say the information we read must go into our subconscious somewhere for
Sure.
it to come out onto paper,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. And I try to write in a fashion where it's like kind of like historically speaking. Like I try to write
Yeah,
in an order of like a time frame, like
yeah,
kind of crazy like that. I mean, I didn't go all over like I jumped 10 years back and 10 years up, unless I'm going, well, what's that called? What do they call that when you go back in time, like you're thinking back in time? I mean, I've
yeah.
done that a little bit, but I try to keep it like as to the timeline as possible.
Yeah, I write like that because all of my books are titled on each chapter, and it's telling you where you are
Hmm.
at the time and the date. So it all runs in order all the way through the book, and it never goes back, like you said.
Hmm.
We're working up all the time because we start, 1956, then we go to 1974. We don't go back to 1956. We go forward. So we hit then 1977 because in 75 she signs a contract to Green Records. And 1977, she's starring in a movie, so she signs for Sphere Pictures. And then that's how it goes. It moves on.
Hmm.
You never go back and you know exactly where you are in the book. And
Right.
that's how I write. It's,
Well,
it's like a diary, really.
yeah,
Yeah.
and it helps people, the readers, try to like paint the pictures to where they should be thinking. Okay, it's 1977, it's 1980, or whatever the time frame
Yeah.
is. Put it in their time, put it in their head, so that way they can picture it. I mean, and that's the beauty of writing is even if they're not picturing that, or
Yeah.
excuse me, reading, not writing, because writing is different. When you're reading a story, you can picture something. You can picture anything you want because that's the beauty of
Yes.
reading is you could literally like, okay, this is the way I picture this. Like I remember when I was a kid reading books in high school and
Mm.
whatnot. I was always trying to picture what the person looked like, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, and the era and how people are dressed. So that's, I mean, it helps with imagination. I guess that's what makes reading so entertaining, right? You kind of like
Yeah.
imagine it, what's going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, I totally agree because in one of my books, my son's girlfriend who lives in New Zealand. I sent her a copy of the book. And she's what, 27? She just couldn't, she loved the story, but she wanted to know why I described the dress. Why do I describe how they look? Because that is what the story is about. It's about the glamorous life of the rich and what they wear. And they don't just walk out in, a tracksuit. They have the hair done before they go out and the makeup done and things like that. And it's kind of like the younger generation don't seem to get that. Whilst my generation, that's what we do. We don't go out. We always make sure we pretty well presented before we go out.
Right.
And that's what I've done in my books. And what you've just said there is exactly what I'm agreeing. Yeah, you're right.
Right. Yeah, and I found myself describing some things that maybe certain people, characters are wearing, music in the background, so the audience could capture the era and the style. Like there was one scene where I was talking about the main character is in a mall.
Yeah.
And this is prior to the cell phone. I mean,
we call them mobiles.
We called the real world, right? When you really had when you had to communicate someone, you couldn't just text somebody. You had to pick up the phone. You had to ask somebody for their phone number if you wanted to communicate and stuff like that. So it was, I try to paint the picture that way. They can understand the timeline that, you know what, we survived without cell phones. I don't know how we're going to survive today's days without them, because we're so dependent on it.
I'm using fax machines in my books.
Yeah.
That's what we used in the early 80s, fax machines. Because the big mobile phones we had, or you call them cell phones, were used, and you had a big aerial on.
Yeah.
You had to stand on something to get a good signal. It's not like now where you've got a tiny,
antenna,
phone.
no antenna. And
exactly. It's kind of like, what I've done is I've looked at technology throughout my books, and I've used the correct, like fax machine at the 70s and early 80s. Then it were telegrams in the 1930s. What I've done is I've actually looked into it. I've researched it basically. But again, the younger generation probably don't get it, and the like say faxes. Yeah, that's what we used to do.
Yeah, and before I was teased the kids, the younger generation. You said, when we were supposed to go out and hang out with our friends and stuff, we didn't have cell phones. So we basically said, okay, 7:00, you be at this place at this time. And if you're not there within that 5-minute time window, we're gone. Like literally, you missed out. We
used to have the British red telephone box. And we used to go in there and put his 2p in and ring mum. We'll be home in 10 minutes.
We're on the way home. There's no cell phone text messages on the way home. No, we called each other and we talked, had conversations, and
But when you're a kid, trying to get into those telephone, you call them booths, the solid. You could open it. We used to have to open it like that to try and get into them. Crazy.
So when I was growing up, telephone booths were around, but they were more like not that many around, at least by where I lived. There were definitely public telephones, as opposed to the booth. There would be a phone, you do that instead of a booth. So I never had that problem. And then sometimes the mall had like sections of phones. Remember the sections? Like you had 5-10 phones and different people would be using it. So it's so amazing how the technology's changed our lives like this.
It has, and the thing is, it's changing again. It's changing all the time, and it's kind of like, now I'm in my 50s. It's like, I don't feel I'm getting left behind, but I feel I need extra tuition on things, to come up to date with it.
Right.
Because sometimes it can be too fast for me.
Hmm.
And I think, whoa, what's this all about? But don't get me wrong, I do adapt to it very quickly.
Sure.
It's just, I suppose if I was a bit younger, or before my MS got really bad, I could have like gone like that and just thought, I know how to use that straight away. Now I just need like tuition and then read, the manual.
Hmm.
Then I can do it. And I'm
Got it.
good then.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. I remember I used to be a whiz with computers because I grew up with the
yeah,
computers. Like we
yeah.
were the first era to grow up with computers in schools and stuff like that. So by the time I got into my 30s, I was still like, oh, well, to him, he's an expert. I wasn't really an expert. It's just, I just
Yeah,
happened to know. And then my nephew came along, and as he got older, he
yeah.
got interested. And he just like does circles around me with computer
Oh,
technology.
no, they do. I mean, my son's a graphic designer, but he's a 3D modeler. And he is a whiz on the computer.
Hmm.
And I used to watch him and say, "What are you doing? How are you doing that?" And he showed me, and I said, "Wow, I didn't know you could do that." You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Technology is amazing. It just changes quickly now. I mean, now it's a lot quicker. It just keeps changing.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
so you were
But
saying,
it's like
go ahead.
oh, sorry, I was just going to say when Excel first came out,
Hmm.
um, um, we went from, you know, journals, as you know, in accountancy, to doing it on Excel.
Yeah.
And at first, I thinking this is a massive step for me to come from paperwork onto screen. But
Hmm.
now I wouldn't do it any other way. I
Yeah.
just think it's so easy. Because obviously I'm an advanced user, and to actually, put your equations in,
Yeah.
and you just go down your line, and it's adding it all up for you.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah.
So I was talking to one of my old bosses, and I think you and I had this discussion before that I also have accounting
Mm.
background. And so I was talking to my one of my old CFO bosses, and he was telling us how he graduated college in the 60s, and he paid like less than $1,000 for tuition for all 4 years of school and all that.
Yeah.
Which just
Yeah.
like wow, just like and then he told us about the books. Like literally
Yeah.
they took the accounting books home every night with them, like in a big briefcase, like
Yeah.
carrying. I'm like, what? Can
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
imagine that? Now we carry a laptop and we have the cloud and all that, but
Yeah.
can you imagine having to bring that thing with you on the train every day? It's just like, oh my God.
Yeah, I used to do that.
Yeah,
I did you? Yeah, I used to have lectures.
yeah.
Yeah, big, big lectures like
Yeah,
that.
the ledgers,
Massive.
the green book ledgers.
Yes,
When
that's
I
it.
first
I
started,
used
they
to
were
use them.
still using that. It was just when
Yeah,
Excel was starting to come along, or spreadsheets were starting to come along.
yeah,
Yeah,
spreadsheets. Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Well, because obviously I did analytical work. I mean, spreadsheets were the major thing in my role, and I would have wizarded it.
Hmm.
And looking back to what I used to do, I used to say, oh, that's long-winded what I used to do, and
Hmm.
now so easy.
Yeah,
Because all you do is put your equations in,
right.
it's done. I just think the Excel is a quicker way of cutting things down.
Hmm. Yeah, I
That's
use it.
what
I
it is.
still use it in my personal life. I use Excel all the time now. Just
I do.
yeah,
I
I
do
do.
for my accounts.
Yeah, for everything else. It's like everything I track with my Excel spreadsheets, and it's just
Yeah.
because the advancement of technology, as we said,
Yeah.
when we first had to use Excel, I used the very, very basic, and even when I was using it, I was just like I'm not really utilizing it. But
Yeah.
now
Yeah.
you literally Excel tells you how to do it,
It
literally.
does. It does. It does. Because if you put something in the wrong box and it's
Yeah,
not in your equation you set up, it actually lights up.
yeah,
It actually lights the box for you thinking,
yeah,
that's not right.
yeah.
Yeah.
This is the one you should
Yeah.
be using. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
So yeah, so speaking of, you mentioned research earlier. Did you do a
Yeah.
lot of research in your books, in your book writing? I know you based your characters off of your own writing, some of the characters you created, but what about, did you do much research?
I did. I researched, I don't go into history a lot, but I researched particularly the Second World War when America actually came into the war with
Hmm.
Pearl Harbor. I also researched as well, when the first private jet engine was available
What year
and
was
what the
that?
cost. I did.
What year was that? Private jet?
You could start using private jets for obviously for say Miller to purchase one. Mid 50s.
Mid-50s. Okay.
Yeah, mid 50s. Um, I mean, don't get me wrong, there were airplanes before that, but we're talking private jets.
Right.
And I researched the cost. I researched on Rolls Royces, Silver Ghosts, the
Mm-hmm.
costs,
Mm-hmm.
mansions when they were built, which era they were in, were they Edwardian, were they Victorian, what the actual brickworks were made of,
Mm.
that cars in particular,
You really gone
because
down to the details of that with the bricks
yes,
and stones and
oh yeah,
yeah,
absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely, because people just say, oh, that's a Victorian house. It may not be, it may be an Edwardian house
Mm-hmm.
because the Edwardians use different materials. So it's all to do with what type of materials. Also, the furniture inside the houses, Art Deco, or
Mm-hmm.
did you go into the Chippendale era?
Mm-hmm.
You, you, a lot of people get it wrong when they write books because they put the furniture into the wrong category here.
Sure. Sure.
I've made sure all mine is correct.
Right.
Yeah.
So
So,
so I guess a good point for writers is if you're gonna write something historical and you don't know what it is, don't write about it.
don't write about it because if you get it wrong, if
Yeah,
you get
you
it
look
wrong,
worse. Yes. At least if you
I,
omit the type of furniture in this Victorian house that there is, at least you only made one. You didn't make a mistake, and people won't
yeah,
criticize you for that. But
exactly.
yeah.
And also, I've researched illnesses as well.
Mm-hmm.
What people who get like breathing problems when they're older, obviously going through birth, that type of thing. I've researched all that as well because I have read books where they've got it completely wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you've got to be there and
Yeah.
feel it to write it.
Yeah. Absolutely. I was asked
Yeah.
one time, how do you know how to write? What do what's the best tip in writing? And just I basically, when I responded, I just said I write with what I'm feeling.
Yeah,
What I'm feeling.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. When I got a review, and the lady who wrote it actually said, you can feel everything in this book.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you're in the book,
Mm-hmm.
and that's perfect.
Right.
That's what I wanted. So
Right.
I'm really pleased with that. Yeah.
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 In fact, I've had a
Yeah.
couple people who read my book and say, "Hey, Gianni, you?" Like, wow, well, it's parts of me. So yeah, so
Yeah.
it's like people are like, wait a minute, this sounds a lot like you.
Yeah. They can see you in the book, can't
Yeah,
they?
yeah,
Yeah.
they can. I think the more
Yeah.
people see you the author, me the author in my books,
Yeah.
the more they're gonna want more interested in the book.
Yes.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah,
They
yeah,
they want to know the book, don't they? Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, so we've been talking for a while. I mean, this has been great conversation. So where can I'll be telling folks on the audience where to buy your books. Speaking of
Yeah.
books, I'll have it in the descriptions for those of you who are watching that haven't subscribed yet. Smack those buttons and subscribe and like. Be part of the ever-growing audience. Where can they get them? Obviously, I'll have the links, but where can they? If you want to share that with us.
Yeah, Amazon, obviously, which is a worldwide one of the largest booksellers in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, I'm with Barnes and Noble. In this country, I'm with Waterstones. Um, Basically, all the main book publishers in the world, Cooper-Elliot is with.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
Great to know. Like I said, I'll have these links for everyone to be able to click on and check out your book and buy many copies for you. I thank you again for joining me today, and I wish you best of everything, and hopefully we'll see it on the screen someday, your book. Because
It'd be wonderful, but if not, I'm just enjoying writing.
yeah,
And thank you, Massimo, for having me.
thank you again, UK. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Love to you. Bye.
So, if you are connected on my social media sites, contact me directly to make an appearance on the MPP Power Hour. Hurry while there are still spots available. Don't forget to smack those buttons to subscribe and like my video. Thank you for watching.